On the morning of July 26, 1944, at 0300 hours, First Lieutenant William Putney crouched inside a shallow foxhole on Font Ridge, Guam, listening to the jungle breathe in the darkness while watching his Doberman's ears snap forward in sudden alert, a silent signal more reliable than any human sentry. At just 24 years old, Putney was a veterinarian from Illinois, the youngest ever assigned to a Marine division, now commanding 90 handlers and 60 war dogs spread across coral ridges and limestone ravines where Japanese snipers had killed 14 Marines in the previous 72 hours alone. To many senior officers, the war dog program was still considered an experiment, and critics back at Camp Lejeune mocked the animals as expensive mascots with sharp teeth, doubting whether Dobermans belonged on a battlefield rather than in suburban backyards. When the Marine Corps first approved the War Dog Training School in November 1942, even base commanders questioned the idea, yet combat experience had already begun to prove otherwise. The dogs, weighing between 60 and 70 pounds and standing 26 inches at the shoulder, could detect human scent from up to 300 yards in jungle humidity where a Marine's vision collapsed to barely 20 feet. They were trained for silence, no barking or growling, communicating danger only through rigid posture and pricked ears. Traditional Marine doctrine relied on overwhelming firepower and frontal assault, but Guam's coral ridges, reverse slopes, hidden cave mouths, and patient snipers demanded a different approach, one that countered an enemy who could wait motionless for hours before firing a single perfect shot. 7 months earlier on Bougainville, Lieutenant Clyde Henderson's dog platoon had already demonstrated the concept's value when a Doberman named Andy led M Company to its roadblock on D-Day, freezing at every enemy position and forcing silent halts that saved an entire squad from walking into kill zones. The 2nd Marine Raider Regiment called the dogs an unqualified success, but Guam was different, larger, bloodier, and defended by forces who had spent years preparing their positions. By 03:15 that morning, American artillery had already poured 26,000 shells into a single Japanese attack formation, while infiltrators crawled through perimeter wire with grenades and bayonets, reaching foxholes where exhausted Marines tried to sleep between attacks. Putney's dogs had detected the infiltration routes 20 minutes before the artillery opened fire, allowing handlers to wake their squads with hand signals alone, so Marines rolled out of their holes already facing the correct direction. What Japanese commanders could not have predicted was that these silent sentries with wet noses had transformed a surprise attack into an American ambush, though the cost would be severe, with 25 dogs killed and 20 more wounded on Guam alone. The story of this transformation began months earlier, on November 1, 1943, when Henderson stood knee-deep in surf at Cape Torokina, Bougainville, as the 1st Marine War Dog Platoon ever hit an enemy beach. 24 Dobermans splashed ashore with their handlers, shook salt water from their coats, and immediately tested the air, processing scents meaningless to human noses but vital to survival. Henderson, a former high school science teacher who bred Dobermans as a hobby, had learned how to turn family pets into weapons that killed without firing a shot. Within 10 steps inland, the jungle rose like a wall, and conventional tactics became useless as machine gun nests sat invisible 20 yards away. Assigned to lead M Company to a road junction 1,200 yards inland, Henderson clipped a 15-foot lead to Andy's collar and advanced by scent rather than sight, halting the column whenever the dog froze and flanking threats before Marines ever entered danger. By mid-morning, Andy had forced 7 halts, avoided multiple ambushes, and allowed M Company to secure its objective without firing a shot. That night, Japanese infiltrators attempted their usual tactics, probing perimeters under cover of darkness, but Henderson's dog teams, spaced 50 to 100 yards apart, provided overlapping scent coverage that turned infiltration into elimination. Dobermans like Rex and Duke provided advance warning 20 minutes before enemy contact, allowing Marines to shift silently into position and annihilate patrols before grenades could be thrown. Over the following weeks, Henderson's platoon prevented dozens of infiltration attempts, guided patrols through lethal terrain, and demonstrated that scent detection solved a fundamental problem of jungle warfare: how to fight an enemy who used terrain and darkness as camouflage. By the time operations shifted to Guam in July 1944, those lessons were embedded in doctrine. Putney landed at Asen Beach with the largest war dog contingent ever deployed, integrating teams across regiments rather than concentrating them in a single unit. Guam's terrain was even more punishing: coral ridges rising 300 feet, limestone caves that absorbed artillery fire, and ravines that funneled attackers into kill zones. Dog teams detected hidden cave positions, sniper trees, pillboxes, and infiltration routes invisible to human reconnaissance, allowing Marines to apply supporting fires before assaulting. Night after night, Dobermans like Bruno, Max, Ace, and Zeus detected battalion-level movements long before Japanese forces reached grenade range, buying time that saved lives and held perimeters intact. Yet the cost mounted. Dogs were wounded by shrapnel, killed by sniper fire, and traumatized by artillery concussions. Putney adapted veterinary techniques from human trauma surgery, achieving an 85% survival rate for wounded animals, while rotating teams to limit psychological breakdown. The climactic night of July 26 brought the fiercest test, as Japanese forces launched coordinated assaults across a 3-mile front following the heaviest artillery barrage of the Pacific War. Dog teams detected the buildup 40 minutes before the guns fired, allowing pre-registered targets and prepared defenses, but concentrated attacks still broke through in places where dogs were killed or disabled. By dawn, casualties among war dogs matched infantry losses, yet their contribution had prevented catastrophic collapse. When Guam was finally secured on August 10, after 21 days of sustained combat, the casualty report listed 25 dogs killed and 20 wounded, 42% of the force, but their impact was undeniable. War dogs had prevented hundreds of Marine casualties, enabled airfield construction, and helped transform Guam into a strategic base for operations against the Philippines and Japan. Putney's after-action reports codified the lessons learned: silent alerts, scent-based reconnaissance, integration with rifle squads, and treatment of dogs as teammates rather than expendable equipment. These principles would shape military working dog doctrine for decades, influencing operations from Korea to Vietnam and beyond. When the war ended, nearly all surviving dogs were retrained and returned to civilian life, a testament to the program's discipline and humanity. From the coral ridges of Guam to the jungles of Bougainville, silent dogs on short leads had reversed the ambush equation, proving that in terrain where technology failed, trust between handler and animal provided a sensor system no machine could replace.